All right, good afternoon. My name is Josh Neuroth. I'm going to be talking about decentralizing infrastructure today. And I work for a project called Anchor. We're growing. We have a token out there. And we support decentralized infrastructure. So what is infrastructure? I think a lot of people, whenever you throw that word out, it's like infrastructure can mean so many different things. And here in the slide, you see in 1890, New York, this is what infrastructure looked like under the street, right? So we see the subway, we have water, or maybe even early electricity, and that infrastructure ends up being really important to enable growth. Here's that same intersection today at Fulton and Broadway, thriving city, and we see this all over the world, that cities and economies that have great infrastructure, they end up growing faster than ones that don't. So how does that apply today in Web 3? Well, we can look back at Web 2 and see that massive amounts of infrastructure have been put into place to support the amazing growth that we've seen. So how many of you remember those buffering Netflix bars about 10 years ago? Yeah, we all know about it. And the fail whale, anyone remember the fail whale? On Twitter, early Twitter users, you'd go to Twitter, you'd see that fail whale, and you wouldn't be able to use the service. And so all these companies, which I worked with at the time on their infrastructure, they've invested amazing amounts in infrastructure, and they've seen incredible gains, where you see Netflix has got a 40x market cap since that point, and Twitter has seen 10x active monthly users. So how does that relate to us here? We have seen incredible growth in blockchain infrastructure in 2021. Right, so Anchor saw 20x growth across all of our infrastructure. And here are some real numbers. I just pulled the last 30-day average for some of these countries. Like look at Philippines. They're making 6.26 billion requests every 30 days to blockchain infrastructure. That means traders, that means projects there. They need to talk to the blockchain. And we've seen this growth across all of these emerging markets. I think I want to point out on Argentina. Argentina, since the start of the pandemic, the Argentinian peso has decreased 20% in value, right? And this has pushed Argentinian users into using DeFi. And to use DeFi, they need access to blockchain infrastructure. So we're going to be talking a little bit here around what is blockchain infrastructure and why is it important. So you guys are probably, most of you are familiar with a validator, the block creators. You probably, if you're doing staking, you're staking to a validator, but there's another type of node that everyone in Web3 needs access to, and that's called a full node. Also sometimes called an archive node or an RPC node, but anyone that's trading or doing any kind of development on the blockchain needs access to a full node. And so what happens is when you need to talk to the blockchain, you send requests to the full node, and if that request includes a transaction, that transaction is sent to the mempool, and eventually the validator picks it up. Right? And so every single use case in Web3 needs access to the full node. If you're building a DEX, you need it. If you're trading in MetaMask or another wallet, you need access to the full node. Really anything in that sense. All right, so here's an example. If you use MetaMask and you're connected on Ethereum, you use Infura, which is a project that's here owned by Consensus. What Anchor does is if you need access to these other networks, we provide access to the kind of the multi-chain future, and every time you do anything in DeFi, connect your wallet, you're making a request to those RPC nodes. So here's an example, SpiritSwap, one of our projects that's using our infrastructure. All of these things that you see on the user interface here need access to that blockchain infrastructure. When you connect that wallet, that's calling the RPC. When you're displaying on-chain data in your user interface, through Web3.js or whatever it is, you're also connecting to those RPC requests. So this uses a massive amount of infrastructure and a massive amount of requests when you're talking to the network. So here we see another one of our users, Zapper.finance. What's awesome about tools is we've seen an explosion in multi-chain support. So you see there over in the left-hand corner of the slide, you can use all these different chains with Zapper, and every single one of those has unique requirements for talking to the blockchain, and they all make those RPC requests directly to those nodes. right? So what does that look like, and why does decentralizing infrastructure matter? All right, so when you have a blockchain like Ethereum, it's decentralized. Anyone can run a node, right? You can run a node on your local machine if you know how. You can, maybe find a web provider to run a node on. But then when you start building a project like Spirit Swap, you need a load balanced environment that can handle that node, because one single node will not handle the traffic that you need to support those requirements. And this brings up an interesting challenge, because in order to support this massive amount of growth, we start to begin centralizing a decentralized system. All right, so what should Web3 infrastructure look like? So I put the logos. Some of these companies are here. I think all of them have some kind of event or have a booth here. You can probably find them around here. But in our opinion, decentralized infrastructure needs to be built across multiple data center providers, has the community involved, and distributed across geographic locations. So something that is unique to Anchor that we've done is most of all other services out there that are centralized just use like AWS. That means if AWS goes down, your RPC goes down, all of the DeFi crashes at that point that's using that. We've put nodes all around the world. We have nodes now in Brazil. We're putting nodes in India. There's South Africa is installing next month. So this kind of helps localize that traffic and build that decentralized system across different service providers. All right, so here's you have kind of like this platform versus protocol. And we've seen that, early on, and Fura was kind of first to market. They've done a great job. Alchemy 2, building kind of a Web 2 business model for Web 3. But, in doing that, you have a centralized system, and you take most of the value, and that's going to the founders, that's going to the venture capitalists that have invested in that. Whereas we think protocols, the Web 3 business model, will eventually beat the Web 2 business model, where the community is incentivized to add compute, to run nodes on the network, and help power this decentralized system. So we think that, why should we care about this? I talked a bit about this a couple minutes ago, but I think what centralized service providers have done is they've really helped aid in the institutional adoption of Web 3. And I often get a question, there's a lot of debate right now in the community around who's going to be the AWS of crypto. I think that's going to be AWS. I personally know that all of the cloud providers are working on RPC services right now, launching validators. They're all Coinbase Cloud. They're all centralized service providers. And we really think that a decentralized and incentive protocol is the right way to attack this, where we have a DAO, where the communities help governing and supplying, has that community first pricing. And this is such a key piece, because the pricing piece is so important. I want you guys to see this next slide here. So I brought up Spirit Swap earlier, sending about 8.5 billion requests to RPC. And on Fura, if you use the list pricing with no discounts or any kind of grants or whatever, at that kind of scale, you're paying in Fura $1.6 million per month for infrastructure. Alchemy, you're paying almost $300,000 without any grants. Of course, they're going to give you volume discounts and whatnot, but we're launching with our protocol a new incentive-based pricing where we take payment, it's less, and 80% is going out to the node providers that are putting the compute on the network. So I think there's a lot of drama around this slide. I know many of you probably liked it or retweeted it, but we think this is happening right now with infrastructure being so important. VCs know that this is important. They're incentivizing, they're building out, they're helping resource. There's been almost 500 million just in the last 6 months that went into Web3 infrastructure companies from VCs. And we think the community needs to have the value and capture the value from that by being node providers. So how do we do that? Well, proof of stake really only incentivizes the validators. If you remember my slide earlier, the validators earn the gas fees. What we're doing is we're using the Anchor token to incentivize running those full nodes. And we're actively doing this. These are some of the logos that are working with us. We have several DAOs providing nodes. Even some of our competitors like Chainstack that are now providing nodes for us as well. And they all serve traffic to that system. That's how we build a decentralized service. So the way to think about this is we're almost like Uber for nodes, where we run an aggregation service, and then the node providers bring the nodes, serve the traffic, and earn out in that way. And that's how we believe the decentralized system can succeed. All right. So we have decentralized infrastructure out there today being actively served by many different node providers. If you're a MetaMask user, you can go to anchor.com/protocol/public. You see that little MetaMask button there. Click on that. It'll load this decentralized infrastructure just in one click, and you can begin using the network. No sign up, no credit card. Also, we have kind of this new public RPC. Same thing. If you're a developer, you can begin using these endpoints immediately. They're extremely fast. There's tons of capacity on, and they're not rate limited. And so that's, we want you to try this right now. So if you're a developer, you can literally start curling against this right now. rpc.anchor.com/ETH. That has full historical data of the blockchain. We have, I think we served what? I just pulled this screenshot today. 50 million requests just on this one in the last 24 hours. So it's definitely growing. We want to support the community, and certainly there's more advanced features like WebSockets and some other stuff that we offer if you want to invest in the protocol and deposit Anchor tokens in that too. All right. So where do we go from this? We've taken a lot of feedback from the community. I think what's important to note is we started out really as a centralized service provider. It's very hard to build a decentralized product and get product market fit. And you know, in 2018, when we kind of started this journey, really like the concept of a DAO was very early on, right? And so we're essentially disrupting ourselves and kind of converting all of that centralized business over to a decentralized protocol. So in 2019, we launched Node as a Service. Was our kind of claim to fame is we were doing multi-chain in 2019, really before anyone else. And then this last year, we started working on this decentralized effort, and we've seen 20x growth last year. And now in 2022, we're starting to roll out our tokenomics, get the token in, and pay out to those node providers. And that's where we're at today. Now, you're probably wondering, if you're technical here, you're like, okay, Anchor still runs a load balancer. We still run the service that distributes all the traffic, right? And so there is semi-centralization in that, but we do have a plan. And something we're working on is a method to decentralize that load balancer itself, and that's probably happening next year. So we're excited, and we want your feedback, you know, and we'd love to hear your feedback. We're open to suggestions. If you want, one of the amazing things about this is like, not everyone is a programmer, not everyone is a developer, but you can learn to run a node. We have several node providers through one of our DAOs. They're not programmers. They learn to run a node, and they're earning out crypto now for providing traffic to the network, which is super cool. So it's kind of a path to like incorporate a lot from the community through those DAOs that are launching kind of nodes and providing that traffic to the network. All right. So thank you for being here. We got, like I said, we got the infrastructure. You can reach me on Telegram at J0SH7 or Twitter, and you can also see us at Anchor.